Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our final session for today's Yes Speaker series. And it's an important one because Sydney Allen Ash is going to talk to us about money. Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge that the land on which George Brown College is situated is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation and other Indigenous people who have lived on this land. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on this territory. Across the School of Design, we remain committed to identifying and removing systemic barriers to accessing college programs and services, and are committed to identifying strategies, tools, and actions to better support our Indigenous student population. In a commitment to build connections and opportunities for students to engage with design's visionaries, YES features a week-long lecture series, 18 to be exact. There are more talks tomorrow as well. The design-focused speaker series has been cultivated in an effort to provide dynamic perspectives and unique discussion opportunities for members of the community, including students and faculty alike. Honest advice for designers from really good designers connects the School of Design with those who have impacted the industry on a local and global scale. We encourage you to ask any questions you have for Sydney in the YouTube chat. Sydney Allen Ash is a strategist and consultant with a background spanning fashion, advertising, organizational design, and communications. She mixes traditional and non-traditional approaches to create culture change and transformation inside and outside of organizations, and focuses her practice on helping people work, learn, and communicate radically better. Prior to freelance life, Sydney lived in New York and worked as a senior manager of global internal communications for Vice Media Group. In this role, she focused on improving the employee experience by creating definitive tools, systems, and guidelines that shape the company culture. She led projects spanning diversity, equity, and inclusion, brand strategy, organizational change, and employee experience. Before this, she led innovation for the people and culture team and worked as a strategist in Virtue Worldwide. Outside of VMG, Sydney is the creator of and host of two podcasts, Toenails, a podcast about running and also not about running, and Research, a podcast about ideas. She's also the host of the forthcoming Workplace, a futures podcast created by Foresight Studio from Later. Sydney is often called upon as a speaker and moderator for discussions focused on the relationship between innovation and inclusion in the creative industries. Sydney lives in Vancouver, likes corded headphones, and is currently thinking deeply, probably too deeply, about sports, her caffeine consumption, and our societal fixation on maximizing our potential. I love that. Moderating the...
You played the video.
Yours. It's nice.
Oh, that's going to keep playing. Okay.
No, I know. Okay. Moderating the Q&A portion of today's session is graphic design graduate Lauren Kane. Her passions with design include motion graphics, illustration, and nearly anything that can be printed. For her thesis project, she aimed to spread accessibility awareness and provide design students with the resources they need to create accessible content. As well as being a full-time student, Lauren has been working remotely as a designer for GBC's in-store. Welcome, Lauren. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over. Oh, sorry, there's also an animation here.
That's pretty long, too.
Everyone's like, there's a longer video. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over to Sydney, who will start her presentation.
Cool. Wow. Okay. If I knew you were going to read the whole bio, I would have made a shorter one. But yet here I am. I wish I could see the faces of everyone who's attending this talk, but alas, I can just see my screen. So feel free to write comments in the chat. Give me words of encouragement to keep talking. Tell me if you don't like something, whatever you want. Tell me your astrological sign. Virtual hugs. Yes. Faceage. I hope I said your name right. I love the virtual hugs. Thank you so much. Okie doke. So we're going to get started. You're doing great, sweetie. I love this. This is all I need. This is like, what is the Jenner's mom's name? That's like what I feel like this chat is doing for me right now. Hi, Zoran. I love this. Yay. Okay, cool. Great. All right. So we're going to get started. So disclaimer, this talk, you've probably already seen the title, is what we talk about when we talk about money. I'm going to send a big disclaimer in case any of these students, any of y'all want to sue me. Don't sue me. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an investor. I'm not a crypto bro. I'm not an MBA grad. I'm not an economics major. I'm not even really a numbers person. So consider everything I say with that in mind. But that being said, let's talk about money. So to do a little level set before we get into it, this is not going to be a talk about like personal budgeting tips or like savings plans or like Excel spreadsheets. You should do all of those things. I should also do all of those things. We should all collectively be doing the things. But there's a lot of stuff like that on the internet. So I don't really need to repeat that stuff here. But what I do want to talk about is our relationship to money in the context of work that is kind of more philosophical, psychological, and practical. We'll get to the practical stuff closer to the end. And I want to talk about money because I think that everyone should have the power to make their work feel good. And that is very difficult because unfortunately, capitalism generally makes work feel really bad. So this is kind of at the nexus of a lot of the work that I do is thinking about work and how we work, and money is a big part of that. Capitalism is making that very difficult. And unfortunately, we will not be dismantling capitalism today in this talk. We don't have quite enough time for that. Maybe if it was an hour, we could get to it, but not quite. But however, I think I'll be able to share some ideas, maybe some big ideas and some small ones that could potentially help you as an individual navigate potentially precarious entanglements with money that you may find yourself in the near or distant future. At the very least, you will hear about some of the things that I have found myself entangled in relation to money in the near and distant past. So there's going to be kind of 3 key points to this talk. The first one starts here. So this first area is about your formative beliefs. So I think that the first step to, renegotiating our relationship to money is to interrogate your formative money beliefs. What did your parents, your guardians, your siblings, what did your upbringing teach you about money? My upbringing, I think that this is the place where I share my personal anecdotes as a way that we can bond deeper. Feel free to share your personal anecdotes in the chat. My upbringing instilled a critical need for self-sufficiency pretty early on. And with this kind of like take care of yourself mindset came a scarcity, a feeling of scarcity, a feeling that there was not enough. A scarcity mindset is this idea that there is not enough or was not enough to go around. There's not enough attention. There's not enough opportunity. There's not enough money. There's not enough love. What is the difference between all of those things? Really, they're kind of all the same. And this mindset is partially what made me believe that I would always be in a financially precarious situation. And because of that, up until very, very recently, like we're talking months, I have felt compelled to work extremely hard to be very safe and very secure because there is no financial safety net in my family. There is nothing there for me. There is just me. I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. Even if you don't necessarily have the exact same experience with money growing up as I did, you probably have a complicated relationship to money. And the reason I think that is because I don't believe that anyone has a neutral relationship to money. This is what capitalism does to us. Because when we're talking about money, we're not really talking about money. We're actually talking about and revealing deeply personal information about ourselves, our values, our upbringing, what makes us feel safe, happy, powerful, respectful, successful, loved, and probably most importantly, lovable. There's this kind of massive lie in capitalism that says money makes you lovable, but then there is also never enough money. Therefore, you will never get the love you truly deserve. This is a lie. This is what capitalism is telling us. This is why money is so complicated. This is why no one likes to talk about it, because it is so intimately connected to a sense of shame, a sense of self-doubt, potentially, a lot of deep-rooted, difficult feelings that no one wants to talk about. I see someone said something in the chat. My family believes very strongly and you have to fight tooth and nail for everything you get. Yeah, I mean, same. This kind of like self-sufficiency, this kind of underdog mentality, I think that those things can be very fueling, But then they can also really lead to, which is my next point, this sense of exploitation, this idea that there's not enough to go around. This false scarcity can lead to exploitation. We can exploit ourselves. We can enter into exploitative relationships of many different kinds because of this myth that is perpetuated that tells us that there's never going to be enough for us, that there's never going to be enough love, that there's never going to be enough attention, that there's never going to be enough care, there's never going to be enough money for you to get what you really want, to take care of yourself and your loved ones in the way that you really want to. I want to pause for 1 second and talk about scarcity mindset for a second. Scarcity mindset is unfortunately one of those phrases that's been kind of like co-opted by like woo-woo Instagram mental health coaches who post like the 2021 version of like live, laugh, love quotes, which is basically just like infographics. And, I follow some of those people and I like love and hate it all at once. But I use the phrase scarcity mindset, just to clarify, I use the phrase scarcity mindset to describe the deeply ingrained fear and insecurity that I have that comes from a lack of psychological safety growing up. Also a real deal financial precarity throughout my life, real deal not having enough money to make things work. And all of this has kind of come together to drive me to work multiple jobs, orient basically every decision in my life around my career, overextend myself professionally. That's that idea of like exploiting yourself, overextending myself on a regular basis so that I can make more and more money, and never miss an opportunity to do so. And I think that this has also, in the past, I have gotten better about this in the recent past. In the distant past, this is also what has hindered my ability to confidently negotiate for what I'm worth. I feel like probably some of you can relate to this. In one area of my life, I'm like a fairly successful, competent, professional human being who supports their friends in negotiating their raises. I paid off my student loans recently, which was like amazing. I never thought that was going to happen. But then on the other side of my brain, I like constantly feel like I'm going to wake up one morning and check my bank balance and it's just all going to be gone. Just like somehow the CRA got in there and I fucked up on my taxes in like 2013 and they're just going to like take it all and it's going to be gone, Or one day, if I take one day off, then I'm going to be called a bad worker and I'm going to lose all these freelance clients that I've like worked so hard for. These are all examples of a scarcity mindset. And I feel like I'm probably not alone in all of these worries. I have only in the past couple of years began to actively interrogate my relationship to money. And that I am sharing this with all of you potential strangers and maybe some people who I actually do personally know is kind of painful and like a little bit embarrassing. But I operate on the belief, as an aside, I operate on the belief that if you're hiding something, somebody else is too. And I know that we don't talk about money enough in this culture. So that's partially why I'm doing this talk. But so it brings up a lot of embarrassment and shame to talk about, a complicated relationship to money, because it's really connected to these intimate relationships with my parents, my younger self, my sense of belonging, my own self-worth. And, talking about this even at a very high level is quite uncomfortable. And I would also want to clarify that this fear is not just the fault of my individual upbringing or your individual upbringing. It is, of course, the fault of these overarching systems like capitalism, racism, sexism, every other type of system that you can imagine, all working together on the offensive to make all of us, everybody, but especially non-white people, women, non-binary folks, trans folks, feel like we will never have enough money to be lovable, that we'll never be lovable because we don't have enough money. It's a vicious cycle that just repeats itself. So while self-work, self-care, all of this kind of stuff to interrogate your inner self, your inner beliefs, your inner habits and behaviors, while that work does not actually dismantle systemic inequity, hopefully, this can help to plant the seeds of disruption to dismantle inequitable systems of power. But we have to start with ourselves. Okay, point number 2. So this is about changing your mind. So I want all of you to ask yourself, maybe outside of this talk, when you can actually like hear yourself think and you're not just listening to my voice, what are you talking about when you're talking about money? I've given a lot of examples so far of what money kind of relates to, but I'm going to give another kind of personal digression because money is so deeply personal. And I think that's the only way to really kind of break down how shameful it feels to talk about it. So personal digression, I quit my job in February. I was working full-time for 4.5 years at one place, and I had the opportunity to take on a big freelance client who pays me on retainer, which, by the way, is a great way to enter into freelance life, get a retainer. And it made me feel secure enough to jump ship. By this time, I had gotten a few promotions that meant that I was actually making enough of a salary to live my life in New York, which is where I just was up until a month ago, and actually have a savings account. I had a savings account for the first time in my life in August of 2020. So if you don't have a savings account, don't feel bad, because I did not have one for a very long time. That is when I got a substantial enough promotion at said full-time job. This was also amplified, even deeper personal, sharing moment. This was amplified. This financial stability was amplified by the fact that also in August of 2020 is when my grandma passed away, and I discovered that she had a will that I didn't know that she had, and I was in said will. So, in the way that the universe works, I received the first direct deposit of my brand new salary that I was super stoked to get on the same day that I got told that my grandma passed away. The universe was really humbling me in that moment and reminding me that you can have all the money in the world, but that doesn't keep anyone around, Another sobering reminder that having money does not make you lovable or loved or keep love in your life. Money is not related to those things. So that being said, for the past 9 months, I've actually been able to experience the luxury and privilege of financial stability for the first time in my life. I don't think that financial stability should be a luxury and a privilege, but it is in this world that we're in right now. Money is not just money. So when I say financial stability, I'm not just talking about oh, cool, I have money in the bank to go and buy nice things or whatever, or I have money for the sake of having money. No, money is not just money. Money is so intimately connected to our psychological state, to psychological and literal safety. Money can give you the confidence to walk away securely, whether that's walk away from different relationships, from a housing situation that's not safe for you, from jobs that are exploitative and toxic, or just situations that you just don't want. Money can give you the confidence and the ability to walk away securely from those things. Money can also give you the ability to rest, to take a day off, to consider your decisions and your actions before you make them. Money is really wrapped up in all of this kind of stuff. And also money gives you the safety net to have risk tolerance, which is partially why I felt comfortable moving from New York to Vancouver in the middle of a pandemic, because I had financial stability for the first time in my life, which is an amazing thing. But this has been a complete revelation for me, which is partially why I feel compelled to speak about it. And it just really reaffirms my belief that I think financial stability, along with housing security, job security, healthcare, should be a basic right. Everyone should have access to this, because financial stability, along with all these other things, cultivate a sense of psychological safety that is needed for self-actualization and fulfillment, which is something that everybody should have access to. So while financial stability should not be a luxury and a privilege in Western society today, it actually is in some ways. And hopefully this talk will help to just shift little mindsets so that if you feel really scared thinking about money, if you feel scared looking at your bank account, if you feel scared negotiating, if you feel scared just about your financial future in general, know that I also feel those things and that the system is made to make you feel those things. That's going backwards. There we go. So one of the things that I have done about my relationship in regards to renegotiating my relationship to money is make this, which is my philosophical tenets of work, which sounds very profound. But it's basically just taking all the things that I used to put on sticky notes around my apartment and putting them into a Google Doc that I look at on a regular basis. So this list of ideas is meant to kind of be guardrails for how I work freelance and how I work hopefully going forward. And I found this to be very helpful for kind of shaping shaping my mindset and really creating kind of like signposts in the ground and creating kind of like a sandbox for where my brain should sit when I'm thinking about difficult things in relation to work. In addition to that, I will also say that I also have a therapist, which is fantastic. I also do a lot of journaling, and I also have my own creative outlets for talking about money and talking about bigger problems in life that are really helpful for me. Oh, what's going on in the chat? Louder for the politicians in the back. I don't know what I said, but yes, the politicians always need to listen. Thank you. Never trust a bank. Oh, I love this little chat. This is great. Yeah, never trust a bank. Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. So philosophical tenets, I'm not going to read out all of them, but maybe if you want to read them, take a screenshot of this and you can read them later. But I just want to call out a couple of them that I found to be really helpful in thinking about my relationship to money. So the first one, you work firstly to make enough to live peacefully. Secondly, to make an impact with the remaining resources, be that time or energy or money. So for me, these two are really important because they surround this idea that I have a hard time really believing, but I do actually think is true, that there is such thing as enough money. I am trying to figure out what that number is, and it feels like it's a carrot that slowly gets pushed a little bit further away, or like a finish line that slowly gets pushed further away from me. But I do actually believe that there is a number, there is an amount that right now for me, where I am at my life, will make me feel peaceful and will give me the space and time and resources to make an impact and support others. So that's one. Another one, which really helps with kind of the feeling of like the icky feeling of like taking money from people and demanding money, and working for people and having this kind of like thing hanging over top of your head and having a kind of antagonistic relationship with money and with work. So the first is that you do not owe anything, you are choosing to give. This is obviously, these are my philosophical tenets. So this is not how I feel every single fucking day. Hopefully I'm allowed to swear because I just did. But this is how I hope to feel. And I read this as a way of kind of solidifying my feelings. So you do not owe anything, you are choosing to give. I'm choosing to do this work. I'm choosing to work with these people. We are on a neutral playing ground. There are no winners and losers here. And similarly, I am not owed anything for my work. Someone else is also choosing to give me what I need to do the work. So asking for money is not... it's not that this goes to my next point, which you'll see in a second. It's not an offensive thing to do. It's not a rude thing to do. Asking for money is just simply entering into an exchange on an equal playing field with somebody else. And then the last one, money is not magic. I say this and I laugh to myself because I remember many times looking at my bank account being like, where the fuck did the money go? And I spent it. That's what happened to the money. I spent it. It was me. I lost it. So just a reminder to myself that money is not magic, especially on an individual level. You know, when we get into like the GameStop world of things and like the stock market, it does feel a little bit like it has a mind of its own over there. But on an individual level, money is not magic. If it comes, it's because you earned it. If it goes, it's because you spent it. That's the accountability part of me taking accountability for my relationship to money. So these were really helpful for me. You don't necessarily have to follow these, but maybe doing some type of reflection to come up with some guardrails for how you want work to feel could be helpful for you. Okay, then the third and final area, the philosophical tenets that I just showed you are really helpful for me, especially when I'm entering into negotiations, when I'm entering into stressful money situations or interactions where money is like the chip that's being used as power. It's really helpful for me to reread all of those and just be like, this is how I'm going to handle this. So this third and final section is going to be kind of like a quick hitter, because I want to make sure I stay within my allotted time. But negotiations, asking for money is not an insult. My therapist said this to me maybe a month ago when I was talking to her about negotiating for some project. Asking for money is not an insult. So you don't need to say sorry. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to be timid. None of these attributes, none of these characteristics, none of these demeanors, whatever, that's not a word. That is not what you bring into a negotiation situation. You don't have to come in guns blazing, but you should not be apologizing. You should not be saying sorry. You should not be feeling like you're asking for a favor, because you're not. You're entering into an equal playing field with somebody else. You are choosing to do the work. Someone is choosing to give you what you need. If they're not going to give you what you need, then you're not going to do the work, and that isn't always money, but it could be access to network. It could be creative independence. It could be a bunch of different things. But you should not be entering into a negotiation where you feel like you're the underdog, in that you're owed something and that no one wants you there and that you don't have any power, because you do. There's two parties. You're both entering in. You're on an equal playing field. Don't say sorry. But what you do need to do is do your research, because as much as you are an equal player, you still have to make an argument for your case. This applies to negotiating for a project. This applies to negotiating for a promotion, especially for a promotion. I find this to be very, very valid. You need to research the market rate. There's tons of online services that do this. There's tons of articles online that will tell you specific online databases that you can use for free to find out how much your particular skill set and experience and where you are location-wise as well. Geography plays a role in this. All of this stuff comes together to help you understand how much you should charge. So do your research. Make sure you understand the range. That will give you confidence to ask for what you're worth. Also, another thing that you should do when you're negotiating, and this goes for project or promotion within like a corporate setting, determine your priorities. There are many different reasons that you take a job. There are many different reasons why you take a promotion. It could be access to the network. It could be creative independence. It could be the money. It could be a variety of other things. Those are usually the three that I think about. Is this going to introduce me to really cool people and allow me to work with them? Is this going to give me creative independence to make the coolest work of my life? Or is this going to give me a shit ton of money? And 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So network, creative independence, or money. So those are mine, but there could be many others for all of you. So determine your priorities. Then that also helps you understand how much you want to push for money, when you could be pushing for other things. Something to keep in mind. When you determine how much money, this point is more relevant to negotiating for projects, and understanding how much money you're going to charge for a particular project. Like say you're doing a brand identity project or you're designing a poster for someone. Something that I find helpful to do, like ask your friends, ask around, do your research, of course, but like just throw out a number. Being like, okay, I'm going to make a brand identity for this brand. Like they're kind of small, but it's kind of like a comprehensive brand identity. Maybe I'm going to charge $15,000. Like that's just like, I just pulled that number out of my stomach. It felt right, whatever. Throw that number up into your little Google Doc and calculate roughly how long you think it's going to take you to do that project. So break out all the different steps of your brand identity work. You're doing the research, you're going to make version 1, version 2, you're going to 2 rounds of feedbacks, whatever all the pieces are. Calculate how many hours you're going to spend. Of course, it's going to be rough. And then divide that number of hours by the number you just threw out, and you'll get an hourly rate. And then you can just like feel like, does that hourly rate feel good to you? And this is completely subjective because money is so personal. But at the same time, you can kind of compare that. You can compare that hourly rate if you can find stuff posted online. That could be helpful. But I find that this, taking this big lump sum and breaking it down to an hourly starts to make it feel more tangible. Because $15,000, I just throw that number out. That's a fuck ton of money. But like an hourly rate, you're like, okay, if I'm doing this for 12 hours and I get paid $30 an hour, I cannot do math. But like whatever that turns into, I'm not even going to try to do that in my head right now. Does that feel right for you is all I'm saying. And the hourly rate is a good gut check. Talk to your friends, mentors, colleagues. Ask people, can you tell me how much money you charged for X? Can you tell me how much money you made at your last role? Can you tell me how much money you make now? Can we talk about salaries? Can we talk about negotiations? How much were your bonuses? How much, all of this kind of stuff. Like, what did you put in your contract? How did you structure the payments? Ask these questions to people. Ask them to your friends who are like at the same level as you. Ask them to your mentors who are beyond you. Show me a designer who can do math. No, I think in colors and words only. Talk to your colleagues. Ask people who you can trust, and start to just get an understanding of how much money people are making. I will also say that oppressive systems want to prevent us from organizing laterally around our financial situations. That is what union busting is, and it behooves us to share our understanding of money laterally with our communities, because then we have power and leverage against these oppressive systems. If we continue to sit in the dark, not understanding our own money or how money works on a societal level, then we will not be able to organize collectively and create better situations for ourselves. So this is actually not even just an individual task, but it is actually a task of collective empowerment. Another thing you can do is write out a script. I write out scripts all the time. Who gives a fuck if you sound forced? It doesn't matter. You're not trying to be a personable host of a talk like what I'm doing right now. You are trying to get more money for yourself. You don't have to be funny. You just have to be clear. Speaking on the phone is really good. I prefer to do that than over email. Over email feels like really just like cold, and then you do the thing where you're like putting a smiley face and like you're adding all these additional words because like a one sentence email feels really harsh. But like speaking on the phone, I find it to be easier. But a note on speaking the phone, okay, this is the note before the note of what I was going to say. Ask for 20 to 30% more than what you want. So once you do your research, you talk to your friends, you do your little gut check with your hourly rate, add 20 to 30% on top. People are going to negotiate you down every single time you ask for money. So just tack on 20 to 30%. That is your buffer, so when someone knocks you down, you actually get the amount that you actually want. Or no one knocks you down and there you go. Your day rate just went up. Magic. This is the really, really key piece. This is something that someone said to me once and I have used it and it works. Say your number, then shut the fuck up. I want $30,000 for that project. Zip it. That's it. Then shut up. Power move. Okay. Don't say, I want $30,000 for this project, but I'm open to negotiating. And that's just flexible. That's a starting point. No, shut up. That's your number. Say your number, then be quiet. That's all. Okay. Wait for someone else to say something. Leave the empty silence. That is it. Okay. Just say it. Shut up. Just do me a favor. If you take nothing from this, take that one note. I see all these people in the chat going off. Yes, this is the piece. I could have done the whole presentation just with this. Say your number, then shut the fuck up. Okay, next point. If they push back and they're pushing and pushing and pushing, you push back. Oh, no, this does not apply to your grades. Everything is a negotiation. But push back. You two are entering into a negotiation as equal players, right? They want something from you. You want something from them. They don't have power over you. You have equal power in this situation. Of course, determine your priorities. If you just want a job right now, and that's your priorities, you just want to get some experience, or you just want to work with this person, or you just want to work with this brand, then you know that, and you know what you're going to say no to and what you're going to say yes to based on your priorities. But if you understand your priorities are making X amount of money on this project, then push back until you get that. I recently said no 3 times to a job, to a retainer contract. I said no 3 times. And then they eventually got to the number that I wanted because I asked for 20 to 30% more. And then we landed at the spot that I actually wanted. So push back, say no. That's what financial stability also gives you the confidence to do. You don't necessarily need that job, In the beginning of your career, maybe you're going to say yes more than you say no. But as a side note, speaking about collective solidarity, lateral solidarity across communities, if you accept an extremely low rate as a designer, as a creative of any kind, especially in a corporate setting, when you're working for your homies, it's different. In a corporate setting, if you accept a really low number, you're lowering the floor for all of us. So no pressure, but really try to organize laterally with your peers and kind of figure out the world of money that you want. And just kind of stick to that, because you don't want to encourage exploitation. We have to model the behavior that we want to see in the world. Okay, and then the last piece, last but not least, know that saying no is a gift. Someone, not in every single situation, if someone is lowballing you or saying that they only have this amount of money and you want this, they're saying they have this, you want this, that is not necessarily them being rude to you. That is just the limits not necessarily. It could be them being rude, okay? But not necessarily. It could just be the limits of what they have. And you should understand your limits as well. Because if you enter into a professional relationship, even if you're just making a freaking poster or like a GIF or something for somebody, if you enter into a relationship where you feel like they're exploiting you in some way, where you feel resentful, you're not going to do good work. That relationship is not going to be solid. You're going to feel like trash. That's going to bleed into your friendships, your relationships. You're going to be mean to your dog. Like it's just going to butterfly effect out from there. So do your best to enter into professional relationships feeling like this, because the work will always be challenging. It will always push you to your limits. There will always be things that come out of left field that you're not expecting. But in the negotiation, that is your place to try and level the playing field and make sure that you're getting what you want. Say no if you're not getting what you want, because it is a gift to you and your own boundaries and your own integrity. And it is also not the dog, Wendy. Just saying that it'll bleed out into your world. Okay, I have a dog, all right? I'm not being mean to my dog, but that's partially because I take care of myself in other areas of my life. But saying no is respecting yourself and respecting the other person too, because we should all just like want everyone to thrive. And if I enter into a professional situation where I'm like pissed and like resentful and like kind of meh about it, I'm going to do shit work. That person's project's going to suffer. They're going to be upset that they hired me and I'm doing shit work. Like, it's just like, it's just dominoes. So don't do that. Know that saying no is a gift. Okay. That's it. That's all there is. I'm done now. I'm done my rant. I need to take a drink of water.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
You're welcome.
I told you this before, but you're very entertaining and fun to listen to.
Thanks. I think I just blacked out for 37 minutes. So.
Oh my gosh. So thank you again for joining us and speaking about this. It was really eye-opening and honestly different from what I was expecting in a good way, obviously.
Cool.
You got me, and I'm sure a lot of the other viewers, to think about money in a different way.
Great.
And thank you for your honesty with everything too. That was awesome. So I'm going to start with a few questions that I have, and then I'll open it up to the audience. Okay, so working freelance. Have you ever been in a situation where a client has told you that you charge too much, or they've just given you a really hard time about paying you? And if you have, like, how did you navigate that?
When in all the recent freelance situations, okay, there's been multiple actually in the past and in the distant past and not so distant past, where I've come with a number and they've been like, that's too much for me. And I go back when they say that, I think about why I would want to take this project, like that idea of determining your priorities. I think about why I want to take this project. And if I think it's just going to be a really cool project, they're going to give me tons of leeway to do whatever I want. And it's for like a brand that I want to work for, a person that I want to work for, because I want to build a relationship with that person through that project, then sometimes I'll say yes. But most of the time I'll say no. But that's partially now at this point in my career, I will say no because I have financial stability to say no, and that's a privilege and a luxury. Like I said before, there were lots of times earlier in my career where I just said yes to the number. And I just accepted that I was early in my career and I had less leverage, and that is what it is. But again, it's like, it's accepting those conditions in your head, like knowing that right now I have 2 months of experience or 2 years of experience. Therefore, I don't have a lot of leverage. So I should take this as an opportunity to build up my portfolio or whatever it is. And then just know, but like, you need to take some projects that make you money, right? So maybe you have another job that makes you money while you're doing this stuff on the side. That's fine too. I have a lot of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's just going back to those priorities, and it's going to be different for everyone what those priorities are and when they will sacrifice the money for something else.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The next thing I wanted to bring up is working for family and friends. For some reason, it's a lot easier to quote or invoice somebody that you don't really know versus somebody that you have a relationship with, right? So if you do work with family and friends ever, like how how do you do that?
Yeah, no, I work with my friends a lot. Oh my God, do I still have an extensive Toronto list? Zoran, it has not been updated. I just saw Zoran wrote something in the chat. Do I ever work with friends? I work with my friends all the time. I hire my friends all the time. They hire me. It's fantastic. I love it. I'm like really explicit about work, as you saw in this presentation. I just like yelled at all of you for like 39 minutes. And so I just think the money is a part of the work. The money is not an insult. Me asking my friend to pay me X amount of money is not an insult. This is what we've agreed upon. You do work to make money. This is what, you know. And so I just be clear. I just be clear with all of them, and I tell them how much it is. And like, if it's a homie and I really want to work with that person, I want to help with them, then obviously I'm going to charge them like a lower rate. But it's the same. I think the same thing goes, you know, I think the same thing goes. I like, maybe with a close friend, I wouldn't do the like charge 20 to 30% more than what you want thing. Cause like, I don't want to do that to like a friend, but, it's the same thing. I just think like money is just a part of the work, you know, just like delivering your fucking files on time is part of the work. Following a timeline, communicating clearly is part of the work. Like, you know, these things get a little more flexible when you're working with friends, but ultimately your friend should respect you enough to know how much you need, you know, and you should be respecting them enough to speak clearly about what you want, because you especially, this is why it gets tricky with friends, working with friends, is people aren't explicit about that stuff. And then resentment starts to build and people feel like they've been exploited. They're working too many hours on a project they thought was going to be small. They're not making enough money. But if you articulate those things in the beginning, then you are less likely to feel resentful as the project continues. You're less likely to ruin that fucking friendship because you wanted to make a poster together, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I think it's just like, it's weird being in the actual situation, because I've had times where I'm like, yeah, if a friend like asks me to do something, or a family member, in my head, I'm like, I totally feel comfortable asking them to pay me. And then it happens. And I'm like, oh, I feel so weird right now, just like telling them how much I charge and breaking it down. But I think it probably just comes with more experience and confidence.
You kind of just have to like cosplay as a confident money person. Just like fake it. Like how I said, write a script, literally just write a script and just say it and just be like, oh, for this type of project, I charge this much. And then just shut up and stop talking. You feel uncomfortable, but if you don't say anything, then they don't know.
Yeah,
you know?
that's true.
It is that, and the reason that it feels that way, and I can relate to this feeling, that money, it feels shameful, it feels offensive, it feels rude to take money from other people, it feels rude to ask for money, because capitalism tells us that money equals being lovable and being loved. And like, when you start to strip away all that stuff, then it becomes easier to talk about what it is, you know, which is like a resource, which is a thing that you exchange for the things that you want.
Yeah. Okay. I have another question. It's not money related.
Yeah.
I know you live in Vancouver now, which is very exciting, but I was wondering if there was like a shift in the design scene from when you moved from Toronto to New York. Like, were your jobs and clients different? Were they very similar?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't actually even, and bless Anna Rita for bringing me on this, I don't work as a designer. Like, I hire designers and I work with designers. I love design, but I don't work as a designer. I work as like a strategist mainly, sometimes like a creative director, you know, whatever. I work amongst designers,
right?
You know, you're in the orbit.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that I've moved to New York for my career because I wanted to have access to the people who were decision-making in the companies and the brands I wanted to work for. When you work in Canada, a lot of the time you're working with when you work for big clients, you're working with the Canadian office of an American brand. And that Canadian office has no power. Like Google Canada has no power in comparison to Google in, you know, San Fran or wherever Google's head office is. San Fran, right? SF? Yeah, that's right, right?
I think
whatever. Somewhere in Silicon Valley, whatever. Doesn't matter. But like you're working with teams that have less power and less control, and I want to go straight to the source. And so I found that I was able to have more influential projects that made more of an impact in the business. I was able to work with like a larger variety of like brands and businesses that like aren't as popular in Canada or like don't have a presence in Canada. And I just found the creative community to be so vibrant. Like, no offense to Toronto, but I just found like the ceiling is just so much higher. There's such a huge variety of people. There's like a way bigger scene of like weirdo, like underground queer people, you know, that I just like love to be a part of. And it's just like, yeah, it's a way bigger pond. It's a way bigger pond. And I found, at least personally, maybe it has changed in Toronto, I don't know, but I found Toronto to be, as a city, quite insecure of itself. And that creates a sense of scarcity, clickiness, like I own this thing, like my crew does this thing, your crew does this thing, whatever, and like less collaboration. I think that it is changing a little bit. I see like a lot of homies like sharing other people's work, which is amazing. But I just feel like because there's so many people in New York, like the best designer in New York is probably like the best designer in the world, you know, like you just have the very best and like the absolute beginners, you know, all in the same pot together. So I find it like kind of impossible to compare myself to other people in New York versus in Toronto. You're like, oh, the best designer in Toronto is actually that person I see at the grocery store on Wednesdays. Like they're right there. I could be them, you know, versus in New York, you're like the best designer is literally like truly the best designer in the world or whatever your discipline is, you know? So
yeah, that's really interesting too. I wouldn't have thought about it that way.
It's like running the Boston Marathon and thinking you're going to win. You're not going to win. I'm not going to win. No one you know is going to win. The people who win are literally elite runners who get paid to run. So like you have to find another reason to run, you know, because you're not going to win. You're inherently, everyone except for one person in the Boston Marathon is a loser. Okay. So like this is a metaphor for life. You have to find another reason to run.
Relating to your podcast there. Everybody should listen to that. It's really good. We can take a question from the audience now. I see a couple here. I'm just not sure how to do it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Emily said, do you want to read it?
Yeah, for sure. Emily. Hi, Emily. Okay. For me, paying back student loans and living in Toronto while trying to find work is what worries and stresses me out. Do you have any advice on how to manage this? I literally did not think I was ever going to pay back my student loans. I was like, that won't happen until I'm 40 or later. And so I just set up the monthly recurring payment of like, I don't even know, like $200 or something. And I just was like, I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I just like set it and forget it kind of thing. And then tried to figure out how to make enough money to make ends meet, you know, in between. But I just like kind of resigned myself to the fact that like everybody has debt. And everybody actually has like so much more debt than you think. Debt is just like a facet of living under capitalism. So, you know, I had $40,000 of student debt, actually a little bit more than that. And I was only able to pay it off, like I said, because my grandma had a will that I didn't know that she had. So like, if that didn't happen, I would still be paying it off, you know, and my sister hasn't paid hers off and she probably won't pay it off for a long time, you know, like, so I think just maybe like mentally, this is hard. Like Toronto is fucking expensive. It's basically as expensive as New York now. And student loans, university is incredibly expensive. Student loans are like, the interest is way too high. It's all fucked. The system is fucked. But just resign yourself to the fact that like the debt is just a facet of life and it will always be there, and try to let it weigh less on you. You know, I know that that's really hard, but, that's like, just accept that it is there, you know? Okay. So just an aside, I'm reading this book, When Things Fall Apart, and it's all about like Buddhist philosophy. And the central tenet in Buddhist philosophy is that suffering is just like a part of life. And so if we accept that suffering is just a part of our lives, then we can stop getting like so upset when like shitty things happen to us, you know, just because like life is full of problems. There's always a problem. Why would we get surprised when there's a new problem? You know, so like the stress of paying back student loans, I kind of see in that way. I'm just like, debt is a part of life. Why am I upset when I have debt? Because it's just a part of life. Everybody has debt, you know? Emily, I hope that helps.
Helped me. I think,
Lauren, when first starting out, how did you gauge your worth? I find that there is a looming, you're just a student junior voice in my head, even if the confidence in doing the work is there. Good question. It depends if you're entering into like an entry-level job or if you're negotiating for projects. In either situation, you can do research and figure out your rate. In a entry-level job, there's a lot of very clear information about that. You know, if you're entering in as like a junior designer in Toronto for like a 200-person company, you can like literally go on Glassdoor and type all that in and get a range, you know, and just pick like the middle of that range if that sounds good to you, and then say that number and from there. So when you're working in like a corporate setting, that's partially the benefit of taking on like a corporate job or an agency job when you first start, because there's like very clear kind of boxes that you live in, and you can do research and that those numbers exist out there in the world for you. When you're doing project-based stuff or freelance stuff outside of that, that's where talking to your peers becomes really helpful. That's where doing that quick math of like, just in your gut, if someone's like, oh, I would love for you to design a brand identity for like my mom's dog walking service or something, you know, if that's like the type of like little side projects you're doing in the beginning, not to belittle your like experience, but that happens sometimes. You could like do the math of being like, okay, I feel like I'm going to charge this person $5,000, you know, and then do the quick math of, oh, this is probably going to take me 10 hours. You know, I literally cannot even do that math in my head. Oh my God. Why am I talking about money at all? Whatever. You'll do the math. You'll figure out what that hourly rate is, and then compare it to, Zoran, I know you've had other jobs in the past, but like, you know, compare it to other jobs that your friends have had or that you have had and see how that feels. You know, like if you find that you're charging like $30 an hour, like maybe that feels pretty good. You know, minimum wage is like 15. We should all be making more than that, you know, like hopefully they should raise minimum wage, but that kind of math can start to help. And if you ask like a couple friends, you know, so you get 2 or 3 kind of metrics, you do a little bit of research online, maybe you find some stuff there, then you throw out a number that you think feels good, and then you reverse engineer the hourly rate. Then you have like a world of like 5 numbers that you can play within. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think having like a couple or a few people you can talk to in the industry about that stuff is really helpful.
Talk to your friends about money. This is lateral solidarity. This is how we change oppressive systems, is by laterally organizing. Wendy, what are some steps you took to close the gap between where you wanted to be versus where you were in terms of financial independence? Okay, so when I moved to New York, I was making very little money in Toronto, but my rent was so cheap that it was okay. And I was not saving because I did not have financial literacy. I still am learning, despite the fact that I just gave a talk to a bunch of you like I was an expert, which I'm not an expert, like I said at the beginning. I was not saving really any money in Toronto because I didn't really understand how. I didn't have that kind of like financial literacy. I didn't have those behaviors. That wasn't taught to me. So that was really hard. And then I moved to New York and I was making a little bit more money, you know, to like survive in New York, but I was not making enough money to survive my like $2,400 a month rent, which is just insane to me, even though that sounds standard, I guess. But it was so fucking expensive. And what I did, I suffered through that and was like constantly in the red for like the first probably 6 months of living there, and was constantly in overdraft on my credit cards, and like did that thing where you pay for something and then you're like holding your breath, being like, I hope it goes through. I ate a lot of the cereal at the office I was working at. I did a lot of that kind of stuff. I just like got some little, you know, freelance jobs on the side. But the main thing I did was just like, I had a come to Jesus moment with myself where I looked myself in my eyes and I was like, that Tom Sachs quote that probably all of you have heard, like, it will not fail because of me. I was like, am I going to leave New York because I can't figure out how to fucking budget? No, I will not do that. That will not happen to me. So some practical things about what I did. I actually like made a budget for the first time. That was helpful. I never did that before. I never really like knew how. No one taught me, you know? And then I also, on Instagram, I unfollowed every single brand, like clothing brand that I was following. I studied fashion school. I'm very susceptible to clothing brands. I unfollowed every single brand. I unfollowed every newsletter of every brand. So I was not stimulated to purchase shit. So that was like a big part of like kind of cutting my costs as well. And then it was just making sure that in the 2 promotions I got in the 2 years I was in New York, I really pushed for them. And I really was aggressive, and I really did my research, and I really stood my ground. Because I was in a corporate setting, I wasn't freelance at that time. Those only happen once a year. And I was just really aggressive about it to get that little leg up every time, you know? Wendy, you can also message me. I think I put my email somewhere, but if you have more specific questions about maybe negotiations or something, I could maybe help. Okay, that's it.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. I think that's pretty much all the time we have. So obviously, thank you so much for joining us, Sydney.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it was such a good way to end day 4 of Yes. Tomorrow's the final day already, which is crazy.
Wow.
There are a few more talks, and then of course the annual award show. So be sure to tune into those events, guys. You can find them at yes.schoolofdesign.ca or on Instagram at SOD_yes. And thank you again, Sydney. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.